Hello, welcome to Moxie Journal. My name is Calyx, or I go by Moxie. I use she, her pronouns. I'm so glad you're here with me today. I am doing the second half of the Witchy decks hashtag that Erin over at Witch of Saturn started. She did best mass market decks, and I'll link my video up here somewhere for my response to that. And this is the second one. This is our best indie witchy decks. So we're using the same 12 plus, there are actually 13 prompts as we did in the first tag. So it's the same categories, but just mass market versus indie. But one of the things that I discovered going through this is actually my mass market decks tend to be more of an overall general fit for my different aspects of my witchy self. And then the indie decks tend to have a narrower, more specific purpose or a slice of my witchy aesthetic. So that was really cool. Thanks, Erin, for helping me do a little meta processing about my witchy decks. I love learning things about myself and others as I create videos and watch other people's videos. So, all right, so let's go. We'll dive in so you can stop seeing my hands moving all over the place. And the first prompt is working with herbs. So I've shown this deck on my channel before, but this is one of my favorite decks for working with anything botanical. I did mention, if you haven't ever heard me, I'm a black thumb. I'm in terms of actually working with plants. I'm very good at killing them, and composting is, I'm great at that, but actually growing them, using them in cooking, not really my thing. So but plant energy, magic aspects of plants, I love this. So this deck is by Eric Maley, Michael Anthony, and Thomas Witholt. And it's this beautiful sort of watercolor pen and ink style. And it just has the name of the plant or tool on the card. And if you don't already have your own association, and a lot of people do, so I kind of like that if you already know about 4 o'clocks and you have a way that you work with them, you don't have any other information on the card that'll kind of take you into somebody else's meaning. However, for those of us who don't have, then we go and look up. And it is alphabetical, and if you know your alphabet, well, I say that. 4 o'clocks. Oh, yes, here we go. Then we have the write-up, and then we have the keywords: community, diversity, variety, and then a whole 2 pages usually for why that was chosen, what the energy is, how to use it, like how it's been used medically or medicinally, maybe is the better way to say that, and then what that has to do. So for me, this is really accessible. It's specific. There are some that have actual, what do they call these? Ingredients, recipes. Recipe is the word. So recipes that you could actually use them if you wanted to use the actual root and not just the plant and not just the card. Prickly pear, pokeweed. Oh, I have a lot of this that grows in my yard. I make sure my puppies don't get into it. Rosemary. So these are wonderful, and I'm going to do a little sneak peek because one of the things for this deck that I don't have many decks that end up being bonded with other decks. I have some, I use pairings all the time. I mix my tarot with tarot and tarot with oracle, but I also, they just move around. So it's kind of whatever I need on my desk. But these two, Apothecary Spirits Oracle and Bonestone Earthflesh Tarot, are quickly becoming an actual bonded pair. When I pull one out, I just want the other one. This is the new mass market version of this deck of the Bonestone, although there was an independent deck that was out of print for a very long time. And these just end up being really perfect together. Oh, interesting. Shears and the Fallen Warrior Death. For me, the art styles work really well together, and also the meanings have just ended up being really great. Oh, interesting. Four of Wands and reishi mushroom. Right, turmeric and the Queen of Cups. Ooh, that one's interesting, because I think of this herb as being very dry and kind of that powerful cleansing. And then the Queen of Cups. This is one of my favorite cards in the deck. She's my significator. I usually use her that way. And one of the things in Chinese medicine is I always end up being too watery. I have too much that, and they always prescribe me sort of dry. I often get told cinnamon and turmeric, and there's some other Chinese herbs that that my acupuncturist gets me. So I think this is kind of interesting. That's a sort of personal connection that may not work for everybody else, but that's definitely a piece that I see. So, oh, passion, flower, and 8 of Swords. So this is just a, oh, here's another interesting association. So this 3 of Wands and this sort of travel and the mortar and pestle. Whenever I see the mortar and pestle, I always think of Baba Yaga and the way she travels. So that's another interesting, very personal connection. So little bonus. Even though we're focusing on indie decks, if you have the indie version of this Bone, Stone, and Earth Flesh, you could use that. If not, you could mix and match. All right. So that's the deck I use most often when I'm doing anything botanical. I do have Southern Botanic, which I love. Those plants are very much in the area where I live. And then there is one more I'd like to just kind of mention, which is the Children of Ostara. This is a tarot by Zia Hunt, and I do have this one in order. I was doing a little studying with it. There's my little certificate. This is a tarot, and when I'm wanting to work with plant energy but not necessarily having it focused around the plant, and I kind of want it integrated with the tarot, I really like this deck. These are all sort of planty type characters in the energetic figure of the archetype in the story. So it is the tarot, like the Hermit, but then it talks about mugwort, has some poetry, and then some meanings, and specifically it has the meaning of the herb or plant, and then the tarot meaning. So I really, it's a synthesis of the two in a way that just sometimes I just feel a call to work with. It's slightly different than working with sort of the plant spirit mixed with my separate tarot. So I don't know, maybe it's just, again, my brain is kind of compartmentalized sometimes that way, and so sometimes when I'm looking for integration or trying to put some disparate pieces together, a deck that has some synthesis already in it works for me. And this is a very vibrant deck, and it tends to come out at this time of year. We're right here at the end of April, beginning of May, and where I am, everything is green and lush, and we just had a big storm, and so everything's very juicy and just fixing to burst with all the colors and stuff. So it's a great time to bring out those plant decks. All right, so that was working with herbs, plants, and then working with astrology. I only have one independent deck that is even sort of slightly astrology related, and it's new to me. This is a Thoth-based deck called the Maria Tarot, and it's by Masha Kulinovic, maybe. It did come from Italy, and oh my goodness, this is like linen cardstock. I love this. I have looked at it, but I haven't actually worked with it. But it does have the astrological, esoteric associations here. Again, because it is Thoth based, it is, let me get to the minor arcana. It has all of the, so what is this? Mercury in Aries, the sun in Aries, right? So this is Aries 2, and then Aries 3 is Venus in Aries, and then we get into, I'm like, wait, 5 of Wands. We get into Taurus, which is 5 of 4, hold on, 4. Well, anyway, I don't have them memorized all off the top of my head, but just that you can see all of the astrological associations in there, and it does come with a deck and wheel so that you can look at those associations. All right, start over here and go this way. So this was the closest that I have. I'm not going to shuffle it, but these cards are beautiful. They fan very nicely. They're beautiful colors. And I'm trying to decide whether I'm going to mix them in with my deck and walk or just save them for another time. I don't know, I've been wanting this deck for a while. I've been getting a little more comfortable with Thoth, and so there it is. All right, prompt 3, connecting with the Sabbath or the seasons. And this is one of the places where I realized I have the seasons, the Witch is in my mass market, and I definitely use those for each of the Sabbath seasons. But I really do have a seasonal practice. I really work with the elements, and I have some decks that I've pulled in that I do think of as seasonal. So I'll just show you 2 examples. One of the ones that's coming out for me right now is Wisdom of the Sacred Bee Oracle. I do actually have the Journey of the Sacred Bee, which is a tarot, but this one is my favorite color. It's all the purple, and this is like all the colors, but look at that gilding. And this is a beautiful deck, and I am a wannabe beekeeper. I help a friend. I live in the city, and I live really close to a bunch of children, and everybody has a dog, so I don't have a beehive at my house, although I do try to plant pollinating plants for pollinators, and we do this no mowing in May so that we kind of help keep some of those ground-based pollinators and insects, keep them a little safer. So I start thinking about the bees and the other pollinators at this time of year, and this deck, before the flowers really start blooming in all these colors, it's lovely to pull this out. So this is a Beltane seasonal deck for me. And then I tend to use the Journey of the Sacred Bee a little bit later in the summer. Just the colors are a little bit more, they're sort of green-based as opposed to purple-based. So they kind of come out. Anyway, so that is one of my favorite decks in my collection completely, actually. And that's the Wisdom of the Sacred Bee by Kelly Burton. Another example of a deck I use seasonally is the Dreaming Waves Oracle. So these decks, I pull them out, they help me align with the seasons, with the elements. And so this one comes out in the summer when I am very much a water baby. I love being at the ocean. And I have mentioned before, I have a lot of wonderful associations with sea creatures. Has a lot of meaning for me. And my birthday is in the summer. And so this is kind of, I think of it as my season, the summer season. I think of it as water, that connection, specifically salt water. And so this comes out at Lammas, which is kind of an interesting, maybe around Litha Lammas. I know Lammas is usually harvest and everything's yellow and bright and a little, that sort of dry, but I always have to have something oceany and watery on my on my desk at the same time. I love the feel of these cards. This was like the first deck that I had that was that soft touch sort of rose petal finish that didn't totally squick me out. These are, they're soft, the cards are thin, and this deck is really easy to shuffle for me. So satisfying. I can't really fan it. I guess it's a little sticky for that, but it's not sticky when I'm trying to do, well, she says as she knocks all over the place, but when I'm doing a spread, like they don't stick and grab. Oh my God, look at that sweet pufferfish defensiveness. The artwork in this is just beautiful. So this is an example of a deck for the seasons, for the Sabbaths. But I decided not to show you one single deck for every single season that I have, just an idea of them. You're welcome. Phases of the moon. I don't have any cards that just like show the phases of the moon. I've been working with the phases of the moon for a really long time. So for me, in my practice, the way I use cards in that is that I have a deck that I use during the Esbats, during the moons. And this deck is called Oracle of the Living Spell. It's an independent deck created by Cedar Moon Witch, our friend on TerraTube here, also known as Sarah Suran or Surin. Sorry, Sarah, I don't know exactly how you say your last name. And this is the deck that I'm using for my moon work this year. Last year I used the mass market deck Shadowlands, and I did some really big spreads, and it's a tarot. This is an oracle, and I needed something a little bit more compact this year. I looked at my traveling, and I'll show some cards while I'm doing this, and I just realized I was going to be traveling a lot during the new and full moons, which is really when I do those spreads. So I decided this year I would just pull one card and use it for the whole moon phase. And so now I actually use it for all of the moon phases, not just the new and the full. And I pull a card and I read about it and I keep it on my altar, and it's been really lovely. I love these cards. They're very witchy. They're beautiful. It's the little guidebook. Okay, here we go. Here's the little grimoire that comes with it, Oracle of the Living Spell. And so in it you have the name of the card, you have keywords, you have a message, and then you have reflection questions, and then you have a charm or a spell. So this is perfect for me, for the magic that I work at the moon phases. As if you've ever been to my channel before, I'm sure you've heard me say how much I love reflection questions. I love to journal. If you haven't been to my channel before, welcome. I'm so glad you found me, and I'm a journaling fool. I like to journal my face off. So I do a lot of these questions, and it's really interesting to me when I use the same questions. Oh, look, it's familiar. In my journal, because I journal so much, because I use those prompts so often, I do occasionally run into ones that I've journaled with before. And it's so interesting how the same question, even if I pull it in the same moon phase or something like that, I'm at a different point in my life. There are different circumstances, there are different factors happening, and I just have different answers. I've kind of thought about maybe asking myself the same journaling prompt every day for a week. Oh, and this is the blessing that comes with the whole deck. Isn't that great? So these cards have been this is the deck that I have been using this year in my moon work, and these are also, oh my gosh, they're so flexible and strong, and they're easy to shuffle, and they're this pretty linen-y finish. I don't know if you can see how pretty that is, and they definitely fan for anybody who likes to fan their decks. They are oracle size, but they're perfect, and they come in this, look at this cute bag with this printing and the little charms. I don't often like to keep my decks in bags because I have one of those brains where I have a hard time remembering which deck is in which bags, particularly if it's just a color. But this one's great because this is so evocative of the back of the cards that I know what deck is in here. Now I have a hard time remembering the name of it, which is why I definitely keep the the title card in the deck there, Oracle of the Living Spell is the name of this deck. And that's my moon deck this year. All right, history of witchcraft, prompt number 5. I don't have a single independent deck that I use. I don't really throw cards around the history of witchcraft anyway, so we're just going to pass that one up. I look forward to seeing everyone else's answers. Working with the goddess. This is one of those places where I have quite a few mass market decks that have like lots of different goddesses in them, but in terms of independent decks, I just have a couple decks that work with specific goddesses. So here's an example. I've been working, I really like these Morgan Oracle cards by Morpheus Ravenna and Hannah Storyteller. These are fairly new to me. I just got them this year, so I've only had them about 4 or 5 months. And I have worked with Bridget for decades. And in fact, I was going to show my Bridget deck, and then I just, it's in the middle of some spell work, and I didn't want to pull it together for camera. So, but I have a Bridget deck. This is my first specific Morgan deck. I then also got Call the Morgan, which is an independent deck. But this Oracle has been really interesting for me as I kind of move from Bridget to work with Morgan. They are connected. And there is a wholeness to these. You know, Morgan, she's not a light and fluffy divine energy to work with, right? She is a warrior goddess for sure. But these cards sort of span all the layers, not just the warlike, terrifying pieces, but I love this card, Hesitation. That is such an interesting oracle card for me. I have done a lot of journaling around these. Hurry and Illumination, Illusion, Jubilation, although this is definitely the jubilation of battle, these folks here, right? Lack, the land, what are we fighting for? Leisure. So it definitely feels very appropriate to at least my working with the Morgan energy. Oh, I love this, the Outcast. But it has a wholeness to it that I found a little harder to find in some of the writings and readings that I had seen with other Morgan. The Slain, that's pretty gruesome. Solitude, Spear. I love this Warnings with sort of the omen in the sky with the birds, the Watcher, the water, the wilderness, and the wisdom. I also really like when I'm working with cards, if they're oracle cards, I really like when I can put them back in order alphabetically. I do reset and cleanse my cards by resetting. This one comes not with a whole book, but with a sort of little white pamphlet like this, little paper, and that's okay. I've had I was a little bit. I wanted more of a book when I got these cards, but actually just reading that piece of paper and then doing my own journaling, this has been very rich. A lot. I've pulled a lot more out of myself connected to the Morgan without having to have a book than I thought I would. So I highly recommend it. So again, that's my, right now, the goddess that I am working with. I'm interested in getting some more. I don't do just tons of deity work. I don't work with lots of different goddesses. Other than, from a sort of mythological perspective, I do. But in terms of actual deity work, I tend to do that in very small doses for a long time. All right. So working with goddesses sort of specific to more of myth, lore, legend, and fairy tales. I love myths and legends and fairy tales. And this is one of my favorite decks. This is the Odyssean Tarot by Chris Leach at Welkin. It does have this phenomenal book, and of course it's the Odyssey. It is, so the Greek myths, and there's this book has tons of information about the myths and history in here. And let me show you the cards. These are bigger, sort of oracle-sized cards. I don't do, and I have these numbered as in here. And you can see they're broken down by suits and then the major arcana. So I have them reset. These cards, I don't do a typical like spread with them. I wouldn't, I'm sure you could. For me, because they are so epic, right? The story, oh, look at that. Tantalus, right? Rolling that up. Sisyphus. Ooh, I have the names wrong. I'd have to look it up. The Minotaur. I tend to pull one of these cards, read about it, sort of study, do some journaling about how that impacts the question I'm asking or wondering about, and then I pull out an oracle card sometime. I do use the Delphic Oracle to go with this, or I pull out another Rider-Waite-Smith deck, usually my Centennial, and I do a full reading around whatever theme came out of the one card here. Maybe if you really knew just tons about the myths, or if you wanted to go kind of on vibes only, you could do more with a bigger spread. Oh, look at Poseidon. Then obviously he's the king of water, right? Then you could absolutely do a spread. You'd have to have a big table. These are big cards. But for me, there is so much in them. And as much as I have read and enjoy the myths, it's not something I have just on the top of my head all the time. Oh, our Cyclops, right? So, all right, look. Oh, I could show you some of the major arcana too. So you can see there's the Fool. He's setting off on the journey. We've got our Magician, our Mercury. Look, we've got our High Priestess. Oh, look at Hera. Zeus. Oh, right. So the Emperor, the Empress, our Hierophant, our Lovers. There we have Apollo pulling the Chariot. Oh, this is one of my favorite strength cards. I just love Athena, Minerva. We have the Hermit. Here we have Chiron. Look at this. Justice. The Hanged One. I think that's interesting with the number. Right? Which way does that card go? Probably goes like this. 13. Here's our Death. And then I think that is a really interesting Temperance card. Oh, we have our Prometheus and losing his liver. I think this must be Scylla and Charybdis, and then Charybdis maybe. Here's our Star, Moon, Apollo, Judgment, and then there's the World card. These are gorgeous cards. They are there is so much to them, and when I get them out I have a hard time putting them back up, but sometimes it's kind of relief because they're so big. There's so much going on, but it is, it's very specifically the Greek/Roman, right, the myths. I also love having decks about other mythic systems, so I have this Slavic Legends Tarot, and this is by Taroteca Studios. And this does have a book, but it's a digital book. And I like these. These are dark. They're the Rider-Waite-Smith meanings, so they're pretty easy to read and to work with. But they the digital guidebook that comes with it tells you about the specific Slavic legend, and you can always do more. Oh, look at her. It's Baba Yaga. She's so terrifying. I love her so much. All right, so these are just a few. They're dark. These are also that sort of rose petal finish. These ones are a little sticky for me. I do, however, really like them. I've shoveled them enough now that they're a little bit less sticky. I don't love that card. Anyway, some of them, the tower. Right, these Slavic legends of the moon. I left that wolf in there. Get it on camera. Calyx, the sun, judgment, the judgment of nature there, and then the world, and then they are fully illustrated cards all the way through. I do like this, right? So it's Slavic. Look at this. Look at the artwork on the textiles. I love all that embroidery and the folds, and look at the braids in her hair. So anyway, this is just a stunning deck, and it is, I like that crossover of using sort of meanings that I know that sort of resonate with what I know, with adding that extra layer of a specific mythic system to it. So those are two decks that I really enjoy working with when I'm in a sort of mythic epic mood, or I'm throwing magic that I want to connect in that way. The next topic is number 8, working with crystals. I only have 2 crystal decks, and they're both mass market, and so I just don't have any. We're going to skip that one. Witchy Aesthetic. This deck is an interesting one for me to show, because in one of my first videos ever, I said, yeah, I'm never going to get this deck. It is Circle of Doors. I have grown in my practice and understanding of cards and understanding what I can work with. And look at this beautiful. This is a picture from the art installation that this deck was created from. Was created by Anne Stavely and Jill Sutherland. The guidebook was written by Brian Duffy. And these cards have a really interesting story. And they are so witchy and powerful. And I ended up just changing my tune. The card that I just wasn't sure I could get over, that just hurt my heart. I've actually, part of my expansion with my practice with magic and using cards in my magic has been to embrace some of the things that are actually hard for me to deal with, that are confronting. And so that for me is one of the things I love most about my spiritual side. And these cards, they are feminist, they are wildly witchy, they are strong, they are confronting. This deck will call me out. It will really point out exactly, this is the card that I just wasn't sure I could ever get over having that. And I have. It's still a really hard card. In fact, that's probably the hardest version of that card. Not that I ever want a tower card to be light and fluffy and anything like that, but anyway, so these cards, I love them. They completely fit my witchy aesthetic. I love the photography, which is interesting because often photography decks, particularly ones that have a lot of faces, are difficult. They're too specific, and I only see that one person. I can't see it as applying across the board. But there is something about the way these are photographed, the women that are pictured in here. This is a very invitational deck. It invites me in, it invites me specifically in to use my magic in conjunction with all of these women, all of this energy. that's depicted in here. It's just, and I do really appreciate that each of the cards has a key at the bottom, keyword. They aren't always what I would pick, but I understand it when I work with this deck. So sometimes, particularly if I've gotten a sort of mushy reading or two in a row, I throw a little magic for clarity, and I work on really honing in on what I want or what I need to work on, and this deck comes out. This is, it is a very good deck for reset and cleansing and helping me look at maybe some aspects that I didn't want to or wasn't really thinking of. It has a way of telling me things that I didn't know I knew. So look at that, the 5 of shells, and this is hunger, and then gratitude, right? Instead of like misery, this hunger, and hunger works on so many different levels. And gratitude, I usually think of reciprocity, but I love that one. So this card has come up for me quite a few times recently, the last couple of readings I've done. So that is the Circle of Doors. That is witchy aesthetic all over the place for me. And then working with animals. I have lots of animal decks. I work with animals. It's interesting. If I'm working with like animal spirit, or I have a hawk that comes down, or a specific, I don't know, beetle or bug or a fox crosses my path, I have decks where I go and look that up and I work with that kind of animal energy. But sometimes I want to do a spell, or I want to do a spread, and I want animal energy in there instead of people energy, because my magic is just, it flows better around animals. And in that case, this is when I pull out my indie decks, and I have a couple of decks that are sort of animal specific. Little Bird by Shanna D over at Sincerely Shanna D here on TarotTube. This is the Little Bird Tarot and Field Guide. It's all birds from the illustrations are all done by John Audubon. And then Taylor Bren has a few decks. It's the only one of hers I have. This is the Oceanum Arcanae. This is obviously the water-based one. She has an earth, she has a fire. They're sort of elemental. And then overall, I have the Heartwood. Where's the little, here we go. Heartwood by Stephanie Burrows and Adam Ohlers. And this one has all kinds of animals. It's a tarot that's based in a sort of little forest. And this one is all mixed up because I just did have it on my desk. But it's this adventure, this wee little mousie is going through this sort of recently abandoned cottage, and and it's his story. So it's like the story of tarot with little woodland creatures, and I love this. So sometimes when I'm interested, that death card is just so, death, transformation, rebirth is just beautiful. I love this Page of Cups. You have the cup with the fish, but then you have that frog in there. For me, this works really great when I need something that's balanced, that has a lot of different animals in it, or the possibility of a lot of different animals in it. I love the wee spider. I don't have the Winding Way yet, which is a sort of spidery specific one, but this one is beautiful. And I just love all of the decks that the Three Trees do. They don't all work for me, but I love that they're out there. The dragon one, as much as I love dragons, that little dragon one didn't really speak to me, which I thought was really interesting. But this Heartwood is just my favorite. Heartwood. When I want to work with specific energy, I'm new to loving birds. I could have cared less about birds for the majority of my life. I'm nearsighted, and so I couldn't see them for a long time. They were just little blobs. And then when I did get my glasses, I was driving and very, I don't know, just centered on what was around. I didn't look up at the sky, I didn't look at trees. And look at these beautiful backs. This is the second edition. I think I was trying to show that while I was talking about. And these are just beautiful cards. These are all birds, all Audubon imagery. So if you're familiar with the work, then some of these will already resonate with you. I think Shanna has done a really good job in like the field guide of, let's see, Page of Pentacles back here. Just to give you an idea, if you haven't seen this Tennessee Swamp Warbler and Ilex laxiflora. So we've got the bird and the plant, and then, aptly named for its unremarkable appearance, however, and then talks about the plant, and then tells you the key word here is determination. And it's warbler, the swamp warbler encourages a diligent and patient approach, symbolizing the potential for growth through hands-on experience. Adapt and immerse yourself in the practical aspects of your endeavors, fostering a sense of responsibility and foundation for success. So I love this deck that it just, I can look it up really quickly and see a keyword. I can read more. I learn more about the plant and the animal. And sometimes sometimes for me, this is a good deck to go with vibes. Even when I don't necessarily know the plants or the animals, these seem to, I don't know, resonate in my readings. So, also this deck is, this cardstock is so beautiful. I love to shuffle this deck. Very satisfying. You can see no warp or anything. It's just a great size in this beautiful box. So working with animal energy, when I'm specifically working, for me, birds are very much associated with east, with air, with my thoughts. And so I pull that out, particularly when I'm doing spreads that are mental, thinking about my thinking, or when I need a sort of specific answer, like a yes or no type of, or sort of that, I don't know, sort of something that can be distilled down. This is a really good deck for that for me. This one, as I said, I love ocean things. This is the Taylor Bryn. And these cards are kind of visually dark. They actually show up on camera a lot later than they are. So this is one of those decks. I have a couple of them where I have to work with them in really good light here at my desk. If I try and sit in my bedroom with candlelight, I often can't see these cards very well. I do look at them. So it's the tarot story through look at the magician. That's a cuttlefish. Isn't that awesome? I just love it. I also got some stickers for this. It does have a little, a little book. This is a little white book. It's really, it tells you about the swords, and then the Queen of Swords, the King of Swords, the Knight, the Page, the Ace, 2, 3, right, kind of tells you about it. It's just not, it's like a little paragraph, right? So the 3 of Swords would be the frilled shark, and it's considered a living fossil. And then, strong emotions, heartache, confusion, and then it tells you how you would interpret that. And that's sort of just, it doesn't even give you a reversal. You would kind of have to work that for yourself. But I do love this deck. This is a deck, again, that kind of comes out for me when I want to work with that ocean energy, when I want to dive a little bit into something. Sometimes this deck, I will tell you that for me, when I start working with the element of water, which is for me about, emotions and West communication. Often this one is a deck, probably just the way I use it, but I spend quite a bit of time. I usually use that deck and I use some oracle, and then I kind of keep diving. It's like a little bit of a mosaic. I lay something out and then I just keep pulling more cards, and eventually I have so much on my table that I pull out like my just Centennial Rider-Waite-Smith and I just clarify it. So there you go. So those are some ways that I work with some independent decks that are specifically working with animals. We have two more prompts here. One is the descent. And so I think of the descent, right? The story of the descent going into the underworld, Persephone and Demeter, or if you are working with, Hades or any other, Inanna or any other witchy way. I know some people use this for the witch's devil, which is different than the Christian devil, but it's facing that underside. So it could be shadow work. That's kind of the way I interpreted it when I showed it with my mass market decks. But another way I just think of the descent is the theme that comes up for me is grief, right? Part of it is just that bravery, that courage to face the descent, but also the grieving process, particularly when I think about it. And the first I knew about this idea of descent in a sort of magical, mythical way was the story of Demeter and Persephone, and when Persephone was kidnapped and taken down to Hades, her mother grieved. Her mother, the spirit of the earth, she grieved so hard that the whole earth, it just died and nobody could harvest anything. And so that's when Hades was persuaded to allow Persephone to come up for part of the year, right? So that's our mythic explanation of why we have this winter season. And I pulled out the wrong deck as I'm sitting here talking about that. This is the one I'm talking about. So I just think about that grieving so much, and then going down and facing all the things that you have to grieve about, and then coming back. And the grief journey oracle, this one I just got this year too, and I worked with it some in February. February is a month where things are blue, and things are usually quiet enough that I have the willingness to go down and face some of that. I do some magic work around grief and healing and descending, and also sort of finding some of my power there. And this it's called the Grief Journey Oracle. It's by Marian Kirk and Terry Cottrell. Do that. And it's an oracle, and these are beautiful. These cards are really helpful with cards that you can sit with and journal with as I'm facing grief, as I'm working on excavating or preparing to face some things. It is an oracle, so again, I don't do big spreads with just oracle. I tend probably at most to use 2, maybe 3 of these cards, and I would probably set them out and then do a tarot reading in conjunction. Sometimes just one. Oh, look at this Highland Coup with resilience. And sometimes I don't even know, I'm just kind of in a fractious mood, and maybe my magic has gotten a little spluttery, and usually that's a sign that I've got something that I haven't wanted to face that's kind of standing in my way, and I need to dive in and deal with it. And so sometimes I'll just kind of clear my head, clear my desk, and in the past couple of months I've just pulled one card here, and I've just journaled about this, about what it calls, about what I see here, until I uncover something that's juicy. And if it actually hasn't happened, that doesn't work. So maybe I would do something else if nothing came up. But I had an amazing session with this card, Chaos Within. That helped me explain a big place where I was stuck with a spell I was working on. So I think these are beautiful cards. I will say that they're not like gilded right? They just have this sort of matte edging, but they are a little bitey. I haven't ever modified a single deck of mine, but this one I've thought about, maybe I should just file the edges a little bit just to soften them. I do notice I find myself not really shuffling it a lot because it bites my hand so much. All right, so then the last prompt here is working with runes or other divination systems, and this is one of my favorite decks ever. This is the Spirit Carrier Oracle by Mia Eluzia, and I love this. It's rune based, and let me see if I can actually show some cards that have runes. And so the images are photography with crystals and often these other objects, and the guidebook that goes with them. This is just stunning. So there are, I have a bunch of them. Oh, that's the main. So, I mean, it has, I can't remember if it has 75 cards, and so of course there's, you know, a third of that of just single runes, but then she builds there are, I don't know, 10 or 12 cards that have triple runes, and there are some that don't have any but are then based on these crystals. So I guess maybe I could have used this a little bit as a crystal deck, but I think of it as a rune deck. I do have another deck that is sort of specifically runes. I also just have runes, but if we're talking specifically cards, look at that. So like Awaken to Clarity, the way the book is laid out is that you have the single rune cards, and then you have the non-rune cards, and then there are significant cards, guardian cards. Oh, did I skip the triple rune cards? I probably did. Oh, it's because I have a little markup here. Triple rune cards. These are the triple rune cards. So let's see. This one is Awaken to Clarity. And you do sometimes, until you work with them. When I'm working with this one every day, it's easier for me to find where these are, but it's not alphabetical. It's based on the rune. So you have to look at the rune and find this. And then you find the page number. You can see how much I love this deck. It's tabbed and used up here. So it tells you the sort of theme here. It tells you the name of the rune, what that rune is about, what it means in a reading, and then, you know, some things about what to do about it, and kind of dives in deep. It gives you a little synopsis or, you know, I don't know, I can't find the right word in my head, you know, a recap. TLDR down here, and then it tells you crystals that you could work with, metals. Often those are what is pictured in her cup, in her picture, but not always, in her photograph here, but not always. She has just some beautiful ways of putting together, and I love these cards. I can't quite shuffle them all at once because the 75 cards, they're a little bit much for my hand. And actually, I have 5 additional ones. I think my original deck came with 75, and I think she put out 5 additional. So if you got it now, you would get the whole deck. I like the cardstock. It's that smooth finish. You could fan these cards. I love the colorway. These look beautiful. They're easy to pair because they pretty much go with everything on my desk. This is one of my favorite decks to work with in my entire collection. And I've tried not to mention it in every single video that I do, but it comes close. All right, the last one I want to show, I do have some cards that are based on woman runes. These are put out by Molly and Mark Reamer over at Bridget Grove, and they were inspired by Shekinah Mountain Water. I have Shekinah Mountain Water's book, and I actually made myself some woman runes. Back in the early 90s, I think the book Ariadne's Thread by Shekinah Mountain Water came out. Oh, and these are some layouts. Anyway, that book came out in 91, 92, something like that. These great little cards, they're like, you know, woman runes. They're like little sigil magic. They are I love them. I wish I had my little handmade woman runes from way back in the day. I keep thinking that sometime I'll unearth them. I don't think I gave them to one of my kids. I've kind of asked and they don't remember. So if I did give them, they didn't make enough of an impression to stay. But these are wonderful and I love pulling them out. I use them a little bit like an oracle card as opposed to doing a full, I mean, obviously I showed you here they have, you can do some actual spreads with them, the way they have this little egg layout. But I don't typically, I've done a couple of these, but I often use these just sort of as an oracle. I put one in and then I do some around. I actually like working with these with my little mini dice too. So that's been kind of fun. Look at that, the hearth. What's great about these little runes is these are not hard to draw yourself, right? So they are something that you can, you could make your own little cards of these if you wanted to just from the book. But I wanted to support Molly Reamer. I love everything she does. She has Bridget's Grove and she does some beautiful, oops, put it like that. She has some beautiful goddess figurines and community. She's a big community builder, so I like to support her there. So that, my friend, is 13 prompts with at least one deck for most of them, and then I slipped in a couple extra to kind of make up for the ones where I didn't have anything. So I hope you've enjoyed this. If you did, give me a like and, subscribe if you aren't already. I'd love to see you back again. And I look forward to seeing everyone else's answers to these. If you have done this this hashtag, go ahead and tell me in the comments. I'd love to look at yours. I'll try and look at the playlist. And do you have deck, particularly if you don't make videos yourself, I would love to know, do you have some of these witchy decks? Particularly, do you have an independent deck about crystals? I'd love to see that. Or just, tell me what's going on. All right, thank you again for being here. I look forward to seeing you in the next one. Bye.